The moment the dean reads my name out loud in front of the entire dormitory hall, I already know my life is over. Rowan Ashe. Effective immediately, you are removed from Ardenfall Academy's residential wing. 200 students, 200 pairs of eyes. And every single one of them staring at me like I just got caught robbing the treasury. I didn't rob anything, but that's the thing about elite academies. The truth doesn't matter. Only the story that gets believed matters. And somebody had already decided what story they wanted everyone to believe about me. My heart drops. My hands go cold. And standing there, holding a single suitcase in the middle of the grand hall, I realize something brutal. I have nowhere to sleep tonight. That's where this nightmare begins. But it's not where it ends. Because 3 weeks later, that same dormitory hall would be half empty, and the house I was forced to build with my own 2 hands would be the only place on campus every single girl wanted to be. Let me back up. Ardenfall Academy isn't just a school. It's a battlefield disguised as a school. The kind of place where your dorm room, your rank, your bloodline, and your reputation decide whether people respect you or step over you like furniture. I was a mid-tier student. Not weak, not special, just there, surviving, keeping my head down, which should have kept me safe. It didn't. 2 nights before my expulsion, a priceless enchanted relic went missing from the prefect's private quarters. A relic that belonged to Damon Voss, the dorm prefect, the golden son of a noble bloodline, and someone who had hated my guts since our very first semester, for a reason I never fully understood until much, much later. The relic vanished, and somehow, impossibly, it turned up hidden inside my closet. I didn't put it there. Obviously, I didn't put it there. Why would I steal something I couldn't even sell, use, or explain having? But logic doesn't matter when the person accusing you has more gold, more connections, and more charm than you'll ever have. Search his room, Damon had said, smiling the whole time, like he already knew what they'd find. He did know, because he's the one who put it there. I didn't figure that part out until much later. At the time, all I knew was this. I was innocent, nobody believed me, and within 48 hours I was standing outside the dormitory gates at midnight with my entire life packed into one suitcase and absolutely nowhere to go. Great. Just great. The academy rules were clear. If you lose your dorm placement due to disciplinary action, you are not permitted to request alternate housing from the school. You either find lodging in town, which costs money I did not have, or you leave the academy entirely. I wasn't about to give Damon Voss the satisfaction of watching me quit, so I did the only thing I could think of. I walked to the edge of the academy grounds, past the training fields, past the old bridge nobody uses anymore, until I found it. A house that had been abandoned for who knows how long, sitting just barely inside the academy's outer property line. Vines had swallowed half the porch. The roof had a hole big enough to see the stars through. Every window was either boarded up or shattered. It was disgusting. It was also, technically, still academy property, which meant I was allowed to be there. That first night, I slept on the floor with my coat as a blanket, staring up at that hole in the roof, thinking one very clear thought. This is rock bottom. I had no idea how wrong I was, because rock bottom was about to become the foundation of something nobody saw coming. Not Damon, not the dean, and definitely not me. Here's the part where the story stops being sad and starts getting interesting. What nobody at that academy knew, because I never told anyone, not even my closest friend, was that I wasn't just some mid-tier student with no talent. I had one very specific, very unglamorous skill that nobody at Ardenfall respected. I could craft, not combat magic, not sword work, not the flashy stuff that got you ranked and admired. I could build, repair, and enchant structures with my hands using a rare bloodline technique my grandfather taught me before he passed. A technique so outdated that most nobles considered it beneath them. Beneath them? Sure, let's see how beneath them it looks in a week. The next morning, instead of feeling sorry for myself, I got up and I started working. I patched the roof using scrap wood and a stabilizing enchantment. I fixed the broken windows. I cleared out 3 years of dust and rot in a single day, fueled by nothing but stubbornness and spite. By the end of the first week, that broken shell of a house actually had 4 walls, a working roof, warm lighting, and floors that didn't creak like they were about to give out beneath you. I told myself it was just for survival, just a place to sleep so I wouldn't have to leave the academy. I did not expect anyone to notice. I was wrong about that too. The first person who found me wasn't looking for me at all. Her name was Ivy Marlowe, a scholarship student everyone in the elite dorms treated like she didn't belong there. Brilliant, sharp-tongued, completely unbothered by rank, and somehow always the target of quiet cruelty from noble-born girls who felt threatened by how easily she outscored them. She'd wandered off campus one evening to get away from her roommates, who'd once again, accidentally, ruined her only formal uniform right before an exam review. She found smoke coming from a chimney where no house was supposed to exist. "Okay," she said, standing in my doorway, arms crossed, staring at the warm little house like it had personally offended her. "Explain to me why the guy who got expelled for theft is living in a place that looks better than my actual dorm room." "I didn't steal anything," I said. "Sure," she said, clearly not believing me, "and yet here you are, living like this." I expected her to leave. She didn't. Instead, she sat down at the small table I'd built, uninvited, and said the words that changed everything. "Can I stay for a bit? I really don't want to go back there tonight." I should have said no. I had one chair, half a candle, and a house that technically wasn't finished being safe yet. I said yes. That was the first mistake. Or the first miracle. Depends how you look at it. Word doesn't travel fast at Ardenfall. It travels instantly. By the following week, 2 more girls had somehow discovered the house. Mira Delacroix, a quiet alchemy prodigy who spent most of her time hiding from a group of upperclassmen determined to steal her formulas. And Selene Cade, the single most feared name in the entire third-year class. Selene wasn't feared because she was mean. She was feared because she was flawless. Top of every combat ranking, 0 patience for nonsense, and absolutely nobody expected to ever see her voluntarily sit inside a repaired shack that used to be a crumbling ruin, but there she was. "This place is quiet," she said, the first time she stepped inside, looking around at the warm lighting and clean floors like she was inspecting enemy territory. "The dorms are never quiet. You're welcome to stay," I said, mostly out of surprise that she hadn't already left. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she sat down, and just like that, without me planning any of it, my broken-down house at the edge of the academy grounds had somehow become the one place at Ardenfall where girls who didn't fit the noble social order could actually breathe. I should have known that wouldn't stay quiet for long. It didn't. Within 2 weeks, what started as 3 girls occasionally stopping by had turned into something bigger. Word started spreading in whispers between classes. "Have you heard about the house past the old bridge? The one that guy built? The one Selene Cade actually goes to?" That last part is what broke the dam, because if the most untouchable girl in the entire academy was willingly spending her evenings somewhere, then suddenly that somewhere mattered. People started showing up just to see if the rumors were true. Some out of curiosity, some out of jealousy. A few, admittedly, because they'd also been quietly mistreated by the same dorm hierarchy and were looking for somewhere that didn't feel like a competition. I found myself expanding the house almost every week just to keep up. More chairs, a second room, better lighting enchantments. I told myself I was just doing repairs. I was actually building a second home for people the academy had forgotten to protect. And that's when the real problem started. Because Damon Voss noticed. Of course he noticed. He notices everything that threatens his image. And nothing threatens a Golden Boy prefect's image quite like watching the girl he's been trying to court for 2 years. Selene, obviously, willingly choosing to spend her evenings at the house of the guy he personally got expelled from the dorms. He showed up on a Thursday evening, flanked by 2 of his usual followers, standing at the edge of my newly repaired porch like he owned it. "Cute little clubhouse," he said, looking around with the kind of smile that makes you want to punch someone. "Shame it's built on stolen time you don't actually have." "I'm not doing anything against the rules," I said. "Not yet," he said, "but I'm sure we can find something." He had no idea what he'd just started. The very next day, a formal complaint appeared on the academy notice board. An unauthorized gathering hazard, citing my little house as a fire risk, a safety violation, and grounds for immediate demolition. Signed, of course, anonymously. But everyone knew exactly whose handwriting that curling signature style belonged to. I felt my stomach drop reading it. If they tore the house down, I had nowhere left. No dorm, no shelter, nothing. I should have panicked completely. Instead, something in me shifted. Because for the first time since getting kicked out, I wasn't just some guy trying to survive anymore. I had 3, now closer to a dozen, people who actually depended on that house existing. People who, for the first time in a long time, had somewhere that felt safe. I wasn't going to let Damon Voss take that away over a lie. So I did something I never do. I went looking for proof. It took 4 days of quietly asking questions, tracing footsteps, and calling in one very reluctant favor from a groundskeeper who owed me for fixing his tool shed for free. But eventually I found it. A servant who'd seen Damon slip into the dormitory storage wing the same night his relic disappeared. A servant who was terrified to speak up against a noble family, until Mira, of all people, quietly used her alchemy connections to guarantee the servant's safety if he came forward. That's when I learned something important about the house I'd built. It wasn't just shelter anymore. It had become a network, a group of people who'd all been underestimated, dismissed, or hurt by the same broken system, and who were now, without anyone officially deciding it, on my side. The confrontation happened during the Academy's midterm assembly, in front of the entire student body, faculty included. Damon stood at the podium accepting recognition for academic excellence, basking in applause like he always did. That's when Ivy stood up. "Before this continues," she said, voice sharp enough to cut through the entire hall, "I think everyone should hear what actually happened to that missing relic." The room went dead silent. Damon's smile cracked for the first time I'd ever seen. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "You will," Selene said, standing beside her without hesitation. In about 30 seconds, the servant came forward, the testimony came out, and in front of the entire academy, the Golden Boy prefect, who had ruined my life over a petty grudge, was exposed as a liar who framed an innocent student to protect his own reputation. He had no idea what was coming. I did not expect the satisfaction of watching Damon Voss turn pale in front of 200 students to feel that good. But it did. It felt incredible. The dean, visibly furious at having been played, reversed my expulsion on the spot. Full reinstatement. Full public apology. My name, cleared. That should have solved everything. It didn't. Because here's the twist. Nobody, including me, expected. When the dean offered to move me back into the dormitory wing that same week, I said no. I chose to stay in the house. And I wasn't the only one. Ivy, Mira, and Selene, 3 girls who represented 3 completely different corners of the Academy's social order, all quietly requested permission to formally register the house as an approved off-campus residence instead of returning to their old dorm rooms. The dean, still reeling from the scandal and desperate to avoid more bad press, approved it without much of a fight. Which meant something the entire academy did not see coming. The disgraced student who got publicly expelled over a lie, now legally, officially owned the single most sought-after residence on academy grounds. And every girl who'd been quietly mistreated by the old hierarchy suddenly had somewhere to go that Damon Voss and people like him couldn't touch. He thought he'd humiliated me into nothing. He had no idea he'd just handed me everything. 3 days after the assembly, Selene found me alone on the porch, watching the sunset over the training fields, like nothing in my life had changed dramatically in under a month. "You do realize what you've built here, right?" she said. "A house," I said. "That's it." She actually laughed. Selene Cade, feared, flawless, untouchable Selene Cade, laughed like I'd said something genuinely ridiculous. "You built a place where people who don't have power in this academy suddenly do," she said. "That's not a house. That's a foundation." I didn't have a clever answer for that. I just sat there, letting it sink in. But peace never lasts long at a place like Ardenfall, because word of what happened to Damon Voss, the public humiliation, the reversed expulsion, the sudden rise of the outsider, who now controlled the most desirable residence on campus, didn't stay contained to our academy for long. It reached his family, and 2 days after the assembly, a formal letter arrived, sealed with the Voss family crest, addressed not to Damon, addressed to me. I opened it expecting a threat. What I got was worse. It was an invitation. A formal challenge, issued under noble dueling rights, giving me exactly 30 days to accept, or have the house, and everyone living in it, forcibly removed under an old academy statute the Voss family apparently still had enough influence to invoke. I sat there staring at that letter for a long time, because the real fight, the one that actually mattered, hadn't even started yet. Damon Voss wasn't the danger, his family was, and they were just getting started. The letter sits in my hand for a long time before I can make myself read it twice. Formal challenge, noble dueling rights, 30 days. 30 days to accept, or lose the house, and everyone in it, Under some ancient statute, the Voss family apparently still has enough gold and blood name to invoke like a weapon. I should be scared. I am scared. But underneath that fear, there's something colder, something sharper, and it takes me a second to recognize it. I'm angry, because this was never just about a missing relic. It never was. Damon Voss didn't frame me because I stole something. He framed me because he needed a reason, any reason, and I happened to be standing close enough to be convenient. And now his family wants to finish what he started. I don't sleep that night. I sit at the table I built with my own hands, the same table Ivy sat down at uninvited 3 weeks ago, and I read that letter until the words stop making sense and start making sense again in a worse way. By the time the sun comes up, I've made a decision. I'm not running. Ivy finds me first, the way she always does. Like she has some internal alarm that goes off whenever something in this house is wrong. She takes one look at my face and drops the bag she's carrying onto the floor. Okay, she says. What happened? I hand her the letter instead of answering. I watch her eyes move across it. Watch her expression shift from curious to focused to something darker. This isn't a duel, she says quietly. This is a legal weapon. What do you mean? She sets the letter down like it's something contagious. The Voss family doesn't just throw around noble dueling rights for fun. Rowan, there are rules buried in Academy law from before either of us was born. Rules that let noble families reclaim property from lower-ranked students through combat challenge. It's barely used anymore because it's considered, she pauses, searching for the word, distasteful, old world. The kind of thing families only pull out when they really, really want something. They want the house. They want you gone, she corrects. The house is just how they take it. That's when the real problem starts sinking in. Because if I lose this duel, it's not just my name that gets dragged through the mud again. It's not just me losing a roof over my head. Ivy, Mira, Selene, every girl who found a place here that wasn't cruel, wasn't watching them, wasn't waiting for them to fail, all of it disappears the moment I lose. Great. Just great. Mira walks in halfway through Ivy, explaining the statute, arms full of jars and bundled herbs, and freezes in the doorway the second she reads the tension in the room. Someone want to tell me why it feels like a funeral in here? Ivy hands her the letter without a word. I watch Mira's face do something I've never seen it do before. Mira is quiet by nature, soft-spoken, careful, the kind of person who chooses her words like she's measuring ingredients. But right now, her jaw tightens in a way that has nothing quiet about it at all. They've done this before, she says. What? Not to you specifically, but this exact move, using inherited dueling rights to legally seize property from students who can't fight back the same way nobles can. She looks up at me. My mentor mentioned it once, when I was studying under her before coming here. She said it's rare because it's expensive to invoke, and it makes the challenging family look desperate if it fails. So why would they risk looking desperate? I ask. Mira's eyes flick toward the letter again. Because they're confident you're going to lose. That lands like a stone in my chest. It should. Because up until this exact moment, I hadn't actually let myself think about what kind of duel this is going to be. I assumed a fight. Maybe swords, maybe fists, maybe some kind of contest of skill I could scrape by on stubbornness alone. I don't ask the question out loud yet. Some part of me isn't ready to hear the answer. Selene doesn't come until later that evening, and when she does, something about her is different. She doesn't walk into the house the way she normally does, steady, composed, faintly bored like the world has never quite managed to surprise her. Tonight she walks in slow, careful, like she's bracing for something. She sees the letter still sitting on the table, untouched since this morning, and her whole body goes still. You already know, don't you? I say. I know the seal, she says quietly. I'd know that crest anywhere. Something in the way she says it makes me sit up straighter. Selene. She doesn't answer right away. She walks to the window instead, arms crossed, staring out at the dark training fields like they might give her the words she's looking for. My mother worked for the Voss family, she finally says. Years ago. Before I came to this academy. The room goes quiet. Even Ivy, who always has something to say, doesn't say anything. Worked for them how? I ask carefully. I don't fully know, Selene admits, and that admission alone feels heavier than anything else she's said tonight. Selene Cade doesn't do uncertain. Selene Cade is the single most composed person I have ever met. Watching her struggle for words is like watching a mountain shift. She never talked about it. Not once. I only found out because I overheard my grandmother mention it during a family gathering when I was young. And the second she realized I heard, she made me promise never to bring it up again. Where's your mother now? I ask, already sensing I'm not going to like the answer. Selene's jaw tightens. I don't know, she says. She disappeared when I was 7. No explanation. No goodbye. The official story my family gave everyone was that she left on her own. I never believed that story for a single day of my life. Nobody says anything for a long moment. Then she turns around, and whatever vulnerability had cracked through her expression seals shut again, replaced by something sharper. This isn't just about you, Rowan, she says. It never was. The Voss family doesn't waste effort on people who don't matter to them. If they're coming after you this hard, it's because you're connected to something they've been protecting for a very long time. That should terrify me. Instead, it makes something click into place. A suspicion I didn't even realize I'd been carrying since the moment that letter arrived. This isn't about the relic, I say slowly. It never was. No, Selene says. It isn't. The three of them look at me, waiting. Like they already know I've figured out the same thing they have. And for a moment, the whole house feels smaller, tighter, like the walls themselves are leaning in to listen. Great. Just what I needed. More mysteries stacked on top of the one that already got me expelled. Ivy breaks the silence first, the way she always does when things get too heavy to sit in. Okay, she says, clapping her hands together like she's resetting the entire room's energy through sheer force of will. Mysteries are great and everything, but mysteries don't win duels. What actually matters right now is that in less than 30 days, Rowan has to fight a noble-trained opponent. And as far as I know, Rowan has exactly 0 formal combat training. She's not wrong. I've spent my entire life building things, fixing things, repairing walls and enchanting floorboards, and making broken places livable again. I have never once thrown a punch that mattered. I have never once needed to. That's the exact moment Mira sets her jars down on the table with a decisive clink. Then we train him, she says simply. Train him in what? Ivy asks. He doesn't have combat magic. No, Mira agrees. But he has crafting magic. And crafting magic follows the same core principles as every other bloodline discipline. Control, precision, intention. The forms are different. Yet the foundation isn't. I look at her, feeling something uncomfortable stir in my chest. You think I can turn crafting into something offensive? I think, Mira says carefully, that your grandfather's technique is a lot older and a lot stranger than anyone at this academy gives it credit for. And I think there's more buried in that bloodline than either of us currently understands. I don't have an answer for that, because some small, quiet part of me has wondered the exact same thing since the day I first patched that roof with nothing but scrap wood and stubborn will. Selene studies me for a long moment, like she's weighing something internally. I'll help you train, she says finally. I blink. You? Don't sound so surprised, she says, though there's no real bite behind it. I'm the strongest fighter in this entire year. If anyone in this house is qualified to prepare you for a noble duel, it's me. Why would you help me? Something flickers behind her eyes. Something that looks almost like guilt, though I can't place why. Because if the Voss family is involved in this, she says quietly, then this fight was never just yours to lose. That answer sits heavy in the room, unfinished. Like there's more underneath it she isn't ready to say yet. Mira, meanwhile, has already pulled a small satchel from her bag and begun measuring out ingredients on the table with the kind of focused intensity that makes me nervous just watching it. What are you making? I ask. Something that might buy you an edge, she says without looking up. A combat-enhancing formula. Reaction speed, stamina, minor resilience boosts. Nothing illegal. Nothing that violates duel regulations. Just insurance. Mira, you're not strong enough yet, she says bluntly, still not looking up. I'm not saying that to be cruel. I'm saying it because it's true, and because I'd rather prepare too much than watch you get hurt because I didn't. There's something almost fierce underneath her usual quiet calm, and it catches me off guard enough that I don't argue. Ivy, meanwhile, has already pulled parchment and ink from somewhere and started scribbling notes at rapid speed. I'm heading to the Academy archive tomorrow, she announces. If the Voss family has used this exact statute before, there's a record of it somewhere. Nobles love bragging about their victories, almost as much as they hate admitting their losses. If I can find prior cases, we might find a pattern, a weakness, something they didn't expect anyone to look for. Watching the three of them, Ivy planning, Mira brewing, Selene already running through combat stances under her breath, like she's mentally preparing lesson plans. Something strange happens in my chest. For the first time since that letter arrived, I don't feel like I'm facing this alone. That should comfort me more than it does, because underneath all of it, one thought keeps circling back, sharp and insistent, refusing to let me rest. If this was never about the relic, if this was never really about me at all, then what, exactly, did my family do to earn this kind of hatred? I don't get an answer that night, but I get closer to one than I expect. The next few days blur into a strange new rhythm. Mornings are classes, forced smiles, pretending everything is normal, while whispers about the duel trail behind me through every hallway. Afternoons are Ivy disappearing into the archive wing, returning each evening with more parchment, more names, more fragments of old academy records that all point toward the same unsettling pattern. Found another one, she says on the third night, spreading 3 separate documents across the table, like pieces of a puzzle nobody wants finished. 20 years ago, a crafting bloodline student named Alara Finch, Voss family challenged her older brother over a property dispute. He lost. The family lost everything: land, home, standing, erased from academy records within a month. That's not a coincidence, Mira says quietly. There's more, Ivy continues, pulling out a second document. 12 years ago, similar pattern, different bloodline, same statute, same family issuing the challenge. And this one, she taps the third parchment, voice dropping lower. This one's only 6 years old. I lean over the table, reading the name at the top, and something cold settles into my stomach. They've been doing this for decades, I say, specifically targeting crafting bloodlines, Ivy adds. Every single case. No exceptions. Selene, who's been quietly reviewing footwork drills across the room, goes suddenly still. That's not random, she says. No, Ivy agrees. It's systematic. Nobody says the obvious question out loud, but it hangs in the room anyway, heavy and unavoidable. What does the Voss family have against crafting bloodlines specifically, and why has nobody at this academy ever noticed, or cared, or asked? I don't have an answer, not yet, but something tells me I'm getting closer to one, whether I'm ready for it or not. Training starts the following evening, and it is, without exaggeration, humiliating. Selene doesn't go easy on me, not even a little. Within the first 10 minutes, she's disarmed me, tripped me, and had me flat on my back staring up at the ceiling more times than I can count. You're thinking like a crafter, she says, extending a hand to pull me up for what feels like the 40th time. Controlled, precise, patient. That works for building a house. It does not work for surviving a duel. So what am I supposed to do instead? Stop trying to perfect every movement, she says. Combat isn't precision. Combat is instinct, wrapped around precision. You need both, but right now you only have one. She's right, and it stings exactly as much as getting knocked down 40 times. But somewhere around the 5th night, something starts to shift. It happens almost by accident. Selene comes at me fast, faster than she has all week, clearly testing whether exhaustion has finally worn down my guard completely. And instead of dodging the way I've been trained to for the past 5 days, something instinctive kicks in. Something that has nothing to do with the footwork she's been drilling into me. I reach out and, without thinking, channel a thread of crafting energy into the wooden training staff in my hand, reinforcing it mid-swing the same way I'd reinforce a support beam. The staff meets her strike and doesn't just hold. It pushes back, hard enough that Selene actually stumbles half a step. She stares at the staff, then at me. Do that again, she says. I try. It works, though clumsier the second time, the crafting energy flickering unevenly, like a candle in wind. But it works. Something like genuine surprise crosses Selene's face, and on someone as composed as her, that expression feels like an earthquake. Your bloodline technique isn't just for buildings, she says slowly. It's reinforcement magic. Applied correctly, that's not just useful in a duel. That could be devastating. I've never done that before, I admit. Not like that. Then we figure out how to make you do it on purpose, she says, already resetting into a fighting stance, instead of by accident. For the first time since that letter arrived, something that feels dangerously close to hope creeps into my chest. Maybe I'm not as unprepared as everyone assumes. Maybe there's more buried inside this bloodline than my grandfather ever bothered explaining before he retired and vanished into quiet obscurity. I don't get much time to sit with that hope, though, because hope, in this story, never lasts very long. It's the following night, late, well past when anyone besides the four of us should be anywhere near the house, when I hear the front door creak open without anyone knocking first. Selene's head snaps up instantly. Mira freezes mid-measurement, a vial half-tilted in her hand. Ivy's hand drifts toward the small dagger she keeps tucked in her boot out of habit more than expectation. I already know who it is before he steps into the light. Damon Voss. Alone. No followers flanking him this time. No smug entourage watching to make sure everyone sees his little performance. Just him, standing in the doorway of the house he tried to have condemned less than 2 weeks ago, looking somehow both more confident and more uneasy than I've ever seen him. Well, he says, glancing around the room like he's cataloging every detail to report back later. Isn't this cozy? What do you want? I say flatly. To make sure you understand exactly what you agreed to, he says, before it's too late to back out. I haven't backed out of anything. No, he agrees, something sharp curling at the edge of his smile. I didn't think you would. Pride's a wonderful thing right up until it gets you hurt. Selene steps forward slightly, positioning herself half a pace in front of me, without seeming to think about it at all. Damon's eyes flick toward her, and for just a second, something unreadable passes behind his expression. You seem awfully invested in this, Cade, he says. Get to the point, Damon, she says coldly. His smile sharpens. Fine, he says. The point is this. Everyone in this room seems to be under the impression that Rowan is training for some ordinary combat duel. Fists, maybe a blade if he's feeling ambitious. He lets that sit for a second, watching our faces carefully. That's not what's coming. The room goes very still. What are you talking about? I say slowly. Damon's smile widens, and it is, without question, the most dangerous expression I've ever seen on his face. The dueling terms specify a magic duel, he says. Full offensive spell work. No restrictions on combat magic, elemental manipulation, or inherited bloodline abilities. For a moment, nobody says anything at all. Then Ivy speaks, voice tight. That's insane. Rowan's never trained in offensive magic in his life. I'm aware, Damon says, and there's something almost gleeful buried underneath the calm delivery of that sentence, something that makes my stomach twist violently. My family made sure the terms specified exactly that. I stare at him, feeling the floor shift underneath everything I thought I understood about the next 2.5 weeks. You're telling me, I say slowly, that I'm supposed to fight a fully trained noble in a magic duel, and I've never cast a single offensive spell in my entire life. Damon's smile doesn't waver. Now you understand, he says quietly, exactly how thoroughly you've already lost. And then, without another word, he turns and walks back out into the dark, leaving the four of us standing frozen in a house that suddenly feels a whole lot smaller than it did 10 minutes ago.